is Diary of a Nation. I'm your host, Christina Zlotnick. Oklahoma is home to more historic all-black towns than any other state. At its height, there were more than 50 such towns here. Today, there are 13. Black Americans looking for a safe haven following the Civil War founded the towns. Before statehood, the Oklahoma Land Run of 1889 also attracted black settlers to the territory. Osborne Celestain, Jr. is the director of the Tulsa chapter of the Major Taylor Cycling Club of Oklahoma. This spring, he pedaled 600 miles to visit the 13 remaining all-black towns. I interviewed him at the Fulton Street Books and Coffee Shop in the Greenwood district of Tulsa, a thriving black neighborhood once known as Black Wall Street. In the spring of 1921, a white mob nearly destroyed the community. The event would come to be known as the Tulsa Race Massacre. The story of the massacre was suppressed for generations, until the late 1990s, when a state commission was formed to investigate the events. Osborne, what made you decide to head out on a 600-mile ride?
November 2018, I got diagnosed with prostate cancer. I had planned to work till I was 65, and at this time I was like 61, and I decided not to go with the traditional treatment. I went holistic, but I was able to clear up my cancer by changing my diet. And then COVID hit. That year, I had the Tulsa Triathlon. Tulsa Ironman was on my calendar. I had the MS-150 in Houston, MS-150 in New Orleans. I had like 8, 9 big races on my calendar, and they all got canceled one after another, just bam, 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 bam. And I was so angry. I found myself at home, mad, and two friends, they messaged me live on Messenger, and they told me they was riding the MS-150 on their own. And I was like, wow, how cool is that? And then one of my friends here in the Tulsa area, he turned 65. So he went out and he rode 2 miles for his birthday. His birthday's in April. My birthday's in April. And he rode 130 miles. And then I got the bright idea. I said, I don't have to sit here in this house. I can go do my MS-150 and I'll just do it in one day. So I went out and I rode 150 miles on my bike in one day. And that began to change me sitting in the house. During COVID, I was mad because I couldn't go race my bike. I didn't lose any money. I was retired. I didn't have to travel anymore. I didn't lose a business. I didn't lose a brother, a sister, a mother, a cousin. I was virtually unaffected by COVID, and I was really angry because I couldn't go race my bike. And I realized that my life had gotten so small that I really had to do something different. And I realized that I wanted to be a light in a dark world. I wanted to be a light. So in my heart, there was this light. The light in my soul met this battle cry in my heart about building community, and I came up with the Community Light Foundation.
What does that do?
So the Community Light Foundation is a bunch of cyclists that use it as an excuse to put on cycling events so we can go ride our bike and help other people. So that first year in Tulsa in 1972, we had some hard times, and our Thanksgiving meal for that year came from the Salvation Army at 601 North Main. We lived at 1109 North Main. The house is still there. The Salvation Army is still there. So the Community Light Foundation, we wanted to raise money to help people with food insecurities. So we wanted to give money to the Salvation Army. We gave money to Food on the Move and also the Iron Gate Food Pantry. Since that year, we've expanded. We're working with Fresh RX. Fresh RX is the coolest program. They take people with type 2 diabetes. They put them on fresh fruits and vegetables. They give them the fruits and vegetables for a year. They teach them how to prepare them. And all the people that follow the program, their A1C clears up and comes back to normal without medication.
Huh.
It's just a testament that we're eating the wrong stuff. Okay. Now there's another group that I just begin to be associated with. It's called RG Foods, and they're doing incredible stuff about food insecurities. They are getting ready to open up the first mobile box grocery store. Well, they have a mobile grocery store that they take to the projects where people can't get out and go to the grocery store. I've been so blessed to meet these wonderful people who are all working in food insecurities in North Tulsa, and me being able to ride my bike, raise some money, and help support these causes. You know, I love riding bikes. It's what I do. So I'm using what I have to do what I can do to help out, and that's what I can do.
Switching gears, we're sitting here at the Fulton Street Books and Coffee Shop in the Greenwood district. This area was formerly known as Black Wall Street. And you and I know it was a thriving business district destroyed 103 years ago by a white mob. I only learned about the massacre by accident. I was at Tulsa Junior College too for the first 2 years of college. And one of my teachers gave me a research project. She said it can be on any topic. And so I was just doing some research in their library and I stumbled across some articles by accident. How did you learn about the massacre?
So I learned about the massacre basically from seeing the sign. There's signs, there's placards down by the AME church on Greenwood.
When?
2019. 2019 was the first time I really learned about the massacre.
No one in your Black community talked about that?
No one in my community talked about it at all. It just was never talked about. And we celebrated Black history, but that never really came up. One of my friends and I was riding bikes, and she was from Virginia, and we saw the sign. We stopped, and she said, "Wow." She said, "We should do a bike ride. We should ride, it was the 99th year that year. So we should ride 99 miles to commemorate the massacre." So we did. And then the next year we got together with another group of people and put on the first Black Wall Street 100 bike ride. But that journey started me to research and find out more about the incident. The best book I read on it was Hannibal Johnson's book, Acres of Aspiration. And it talked about the Black towns in the Black Wall Street Massacre.
So you have a ride to remember that you've organized. That's going to happen again. It happened recently, but you're going to do it again, right?
Right. June 1st, we just completed the third annual Ride to Remember, and it's always going to be the first weekend in June. That was during the time of the actual race ride.
Right. May 31st, June 1st.
Exactly. And so the Ride to Remember, what we want to do, we want to honor the people that died during that time. We want to remember our history. We're not celebrating it. We're honoring it. And my idea is that we ride into a brighter future. When that ride happened over a 3-year period, there was like 13 different incidents in this country where white mobs burned out Black people. So Tulsa wasn't the only one. It was the biggest one. It's the most well known about. But those dark clouds are on the horizon now. And my challenge to everyone is that we have to be our very best in our darkest moments. Darkness can only prevail when we choose not to shine our lights. So when we shine our light, I don't care how dark it is, the darkness has to recede. So when we all shine our lights, darkness can't do anything but back up.
Had you ever met any survivors of the massacre, or do you know any descendants?
I know some descendants, and I met, I didn't meet her, but one of the ladies who was a survivor has actually spoke here at Fulton Street a couple of times.
What did you learn from her story?
Just the horror of the whole thing. They actually use airplanes to shoot at people. And the song by Gap Band, You Dropped a Bomb on Me, is about the Black Wall Street Massacre.
Tulsa Band.
Yes. Gap Band, Greenwood, Archton Pine. I went to school with Robert Wilson. He was at Central for 1 year. Robert has passed away now. But that was about the history of here. And when they did the album, they had in their contract not to talk about it until a certain period of time had passed. And I think that period of time passed about 3 years ago.
Let's shift to the 13 black towns that you visited this spring. Oklahoma, we know, is home to more historic all-black towns than any other state. At one point, there were about 50. Today, there are around 13. What do you know about the history of the movement here?
At one time, there was more black-owned land in Oklahoma than the whole country combined. So Oklahoma owns the black town narrative. There's 13 remaining black towns, and to be a official black town, you have to be incorporated. You have to have a post office. So a lot of those settlements are still there, but they're not incorporated. They don't have a post office, so they're not considered as an official black town. At one point, they were trying to make Oklahoma a black state. But that didn't come about. Then, especially when oil was discovered in Oklahoma, that changed everything. And when Oklahoma became a state, then the laws were enacted by white people.
The Jim Crow laws.
Jim Crow laws to basically take the property of blacks. It wasn't advantageous to blacks. That led to part of the demise.
And the Great Depression.
The Great Depression. It's a lot of things. And then when you grow up in a small community, where's the first place you want to go? Is to the city. You know, for communities to survive, the young people have to be willing to stay, work, and build a community. But most of us, if we grew up in a small community, we want to move to the city where we see more opportunities there. Also, most of the towns was built around the railroad. So when the railroad shifted, the town lost a lot of economic impact. Also, when the highway system, the interstate system, during the 60s, most of the interstates was run right through black neighborhoods. Like you can look a quarter mile north of here, and there's 244 running right through the heart.
Right, I-244.
I-244.
Divided the city. And the people on the committees who picked where the roads went were not black. They were white people saying, okay, we can run it right through here. Same thing in New Orleans. I-10 runs right through the heart of the black community. So in April, you headed out on a 600-mile trip across the 13 all-black Oklahoma towns. Tell me about that. It started right here in Greenwood.
I've always wanted to do a multi-day bike ride. And when I was working offshore and I had a family, you know, you come home, you've been gone for 2 weeks. Nobody wants you to be gone for a week. Okay. So now I'm single and I turned 66. So I wanted to do this multi-day ride and I thought I'd create my own. So I turned 66. I was going to ride on Route 66. We was going to ride 600 miles. And so we started here at Fulton Street Coffee Shop. And the first place we went to was Langston. And it was really funny because I did all this work to get my bike computer, to put the map in my bike computer. So we took off from here. I hit the map, hit the bike computer to get it started. And it says the file is too big.
You're too ambitious.
Yeah. So with working the routes and doing all the planning, I knew how to get to Langston. So we rode from here to Langston, which was like 88 miles the first day. It was a beautiful day. We had some great news coverage. You know, we got ambushed in Sapulpa by 2 news crews. And we made it to Langston and we loaded up. So the towns don't have facilities to house people because they also don't have restaurants. So the plan was to ride to Langston. We had we call it a sag wagon. It's an emergency vehicle that had our food and supplies in it. And we loaded up and we spent the night in Guthrie. And then the next day, we only had to ride 75 miles from Langston to Brooksville. And it was raining. So since it was raining, I said, okay, we'll wait and we'll delay an hour or so for the rain. And, when we got to Langston, coming out of Langston, we were on a gravel road. So when I made the maps, also, I did not pre-drive the course. So each day was an adventure. And Ride with GPS said that out of the 600 miles, only 2 miles was gravel. And I knew that was a lie. I just knew that was a lie. Some of those roads might have been paved 50 years ago, but they're not paved now. And coming out of Langston, that was a real test for us because it was raining that day and we were riding like 2 inches of mud. And my friend that was riding with me was on a road bike. I was on a gravel bike with fatter tires. And I told him he didn't have to do this. And he was like, I'm determined. I'm a ride. And we rode, and we were also getting farther and farther behind. And the thick mud was only for like the first 5 miles. Then we hit some pretty solid packed gravel, but we were still behind. There was a local Oklahoma City radio station wanted to interview me. So we stopped for lunch. We was waiting for the interview call. We were wet and we were kind of cold. And I have poor circulation in my hands and feet. And I started going hypothermic. So we had to cancel the radio interview, get back on the bikes and start riding. My SAG driver, Handy Randy Anderson out of Broken Arrow, said, look, dude, he said, y'all are way behind. We need to get off this gravel road so we can make up some time. So we headed west to 177 and took the highway 177. We got on pavement. We had the wind at our back and life became really good. We made it to Brooksville, and Brooksville was so quiet. It's just south of Tecumseh, and it's in a little valley, and it's just like the place that time forgot. It was so quiet, idyllic, that it was such a beautiful thing. Very small community. Maybe 60 or 70 people lived there. We did not visit with anybody in Brooksville. But that was the day we had our most challenging, the rain, the mud. If that was the day that we were going to quit, that was the day. So we survived that. We spent the night in, Shawnee. The next morning we go back to Brooksville to take off, and I'm on a flat. So I had to put some sealant in my tire. We pump it up. We get the flat straightened out, and I'm riding and my shifters are not working properly. And I'm like, man, what is going on here? So I call my mechanic, and he said, Osborne, did you wash the bike? And I went, no. So, there was a hose nearby. So I rinsed the bike off and the shifter started working again. Life became good again. And that day was really windy. But it was a beautiful day. The guy I'm riding with, he weighs 120 pounds soaking wet. So when I'm drafting behind him, he makes a really good profile to draft behind, but we had a good day. We made it down to Tatum's, and they were so excited to see us. They had little gift baskets made for us. We came in from the west, and so they assumed that we got lost. And I was trying to explain to them that we wasn't lost. They said, you had to be lost. You came in from the west. I said, this is my birthday ride, and I made the route, and nobody else knows where we're going. So this is where we came, So I tried to make a loop that didn't repeat itself, because I wanted you to ride in one way and ride out a different way to see some different scenery throughout the whole trip. And I pretty much accomplished that until I got to Renville, Oklahoma.
I did a little bit of research on all of these towns. So Langston, as we know, is the farthest west of the historic Black colleges. Is that right?
Yes. Langston is the farthest west of the historic Black colleges. I thought you was going to say the farthest west of the historic Black towns, but it is the colleges. The farthest west town is Tatum, which is southwest of Langston.
Farthest west town in Oklahoma, Tatum's.
Yes.
A.R. Brooks, he was a cotton buyer and farmer, and he is the namesake of Brooksville.
Yes.
His son became the town's first postmaster. And like you said earlier, you have to have a post office.
You have to have a post office
to be a town. And then Tatum's, I thought this was interesting. The film Black Gold, the 1927 silent film, was filmed in Tatum's.
I did not know that. Tatum's they have a lot of cowboys in Tatum's. And they are very proud about that. There's not a whole lot of industry in any of these communities. And one thing that I'm trying to do is I want people to come to Oklahoma and ride their bikes on our roads. After this event, I was contacted by a group that wants to bring some teenagers up here and ride the same route, camp out, and hit the historic Black towns. That's what I want to create. I want to create cycling events that go to these communities and bring financial resources to those communities. Those communities don't realize the power of cycling because they're not cyclists. But it's not an end all for everything, but it's just one little small thing that I can do. And maybe that can prompt some ideas on other things that they can do to help generate some financial resources for those communities. I see opportunities that we can build a cycling event around the Black towns. And there's enough major tailor clubs across the country that we got like 500 major tailor clubs around the country, that's willing to come and ride these events, and other, people around the country, if we promote it right, can also do this. This idea came from a video I saw. It was, Route 66. They rode from Chicago to LA. They came right through Oklahoma. And I'm like, we can do that.
Yeah, we have the longest stretch of Route 66.
Exactly.
400 miles.
And we can do that. But it's something that the community has to get behind it, and I think that I have some momentum there, to make that happen. I just have to, it's not going to happen overnight. It's stacking the bricks. It's laying the one brick and the next brick and the next brick and continuing the process until it takes root.
Day 4, you hit Lima. What's
Yes.
Lima like?
So Lima is basically 106 miles from Tatum. So it was actually our scheduled longest day on the bike. And also Lima is just north of a little town called Bowlegs. It's actually northeast. And in my head, I was thinking it was just north. And so I hadn't driven these roads. So I picked this road going into Lima, and I was thinking that the GPS was wrong because I was supposed to be there by now. And we went through this old, like, oil field section, and oh my God, Lima is on top of a hill. And it was like a gravel road with like 13%. It was steep. We were tired. It was a very challenging day.
Boley, Clearview,
Yeah.
Vernon, and Grayson. Day 5.
So,
Boley's a big one.
Bowley's a big one. And
The crown jewel.
Yes. So
The largest of the Black towns.
now my adventurous side, instead of taking a highway into Bowley, we took a alternate route, which happened to be gravel. And we hit a section that was, sand, and it was so deep we had to push our bikes for like a quarter of a mile.
Oh, that's rough.
Okay. But that wasn't the weirdest part. The weirdest part was we hit a section that we saw some dogs, and we thought the dogs was going to chase us, and the dogs actually started running from us. So, this was so bizarre. The dogs was running and howling, trying to get away from the bicycles. And we looked at each other like, can you believe that? So we was thinking that they had never seen a bicycle before, and we get to Lima, we get to Boley. We're there early, and we're going to meet with the mayor, and she wasn't there at the time. So the guy I'm riding with, his wife is actually a SAG driver that day. So we actually stopped, and we had a picnic in the park. And then the vice president of the Major Taylor Club came down from Oklahoma City and rode with us. And then a photographer from Tulsa came up and met us. And we were over halfway. And that's when I began to relax and realize that we were going to make it. And we start trying to enjoy ourselves. So they rode with us for a while. We also got very much off schedule because we were riding a slower rate. So we made it to Vernon. We made it to Clairview, and we realized that we were not going to make Grayson that day, but we had a great time. I was so dialed in that it was all about hitting the next mark. And so from that point on, I began to relax and enjoy the journey a lot more. So when we left, we met some wonderful people in Clairview. We met some wonderful people in Boley. Boley has a restaurant. They also have the Boley Rodeo, and they have the highest population because they have two prisons, a prison in Boley.
It's got the country's oldest Black community-based rodeo.
Yes. And they just had that
every Memorial Day weekend.
Memorial Day weekend, they have like 30,000 people descend on the city of Boley.
And I know Booker T. Washington visited Boley.
He did.
He said it was the most enterprising and in many ways the most interesting of the Negro towns in the United States.
Well, and Boley probably still holds that title because of the rodeo and what they bring there.
I also read that members of the gang of Pretty Boy Floyd were killed after they robbed the Boley Bank and killed its president.
Right. Yeah. They also have some caves in Boley.
I didn't know that.
So they have some caves in Boley that people hid out in the caves before for different reasons.
Good and bad.
Yeah, good and bad, absolutely. Now, south of Boley, southeast of Boley is Clairview, and Clairview has the Black Educators Hall of Fame, run by the Nero family, and lovely people, lovely little museum. We spent some couple of hours there. Most of the places we're talking about was on higher ground. Going down to Vernon, you was descending in elevation and you was going into the valley. And my ride with GPS said that the only 2 miles of gravel was in Vernon. Well, we had to take 5 miles of gravel into Vernon. So making a route coming out of Vernon, I was looking for a different alternative route because I didn't want to do the 5 miles that we came in on. And actually we did 2 miles going south of Vernon, hit a paved section that took us underneath the 75 highway. And then there was a beautiful paved road heading north to Grayson. And it was the wind at our back. It was a beautiful day. We hit this bridge. It was probably across the South Canadian River. It was an old steel frame bridge that had the rusty patina, the brownish look, and it had been tagged with some graffiti. It was so beautiful. It was in the middle of nowhere. It was so beautiful. We all just stopped. We had to stop. We took pictures on the bridge. We took pictures around the bridge. It was just such a beautiful day. That whole ride. We had some big climbs because we were in the valley. We had to climb out of the valley, going back up to Grayson. And it was a sight to behold. We didn't visit with anybody in Vernon. We did visit with the mayor of Grayson. He came out. He's a character. I can't remember his name, But he was very, energetic. They have the Gumbo Festival in Grayson. And I'm like, how do you have gumbo in Grayson? Well, a lot of the people that settled in Grayson was from, the New Orleans, the Louisiana area. And they bought gumbo filet and other things. So I'm going to have to actually go down there and check that out. Grayson it's a beautiful place. But when we left Grayson, we were heading to Renville.
Day 6.
Day 6. And we're approaching Chakotah, and I see a white van ringing cowbells and blowing its horn. And I look up, and it's the Fat Tire van. It's the two managers of the Fat Tire, the bike shop here in Tulsa.
Oh, yes.
Steve Palmer and Tracy Barton came out to meet us and service our bikes unexpectedly. So we all met at the Blues Hall of Fame in Renville, where Selby Minard does the Dust to Dun Blues Festival Labor Day weekend every year. This festival has been going on 34 years. This year will be 35. But first time I went to it was 2023. Oh my God, I had so much fun. It reminded me so much of the New Orleans Jazz Festival. I was there every night for 3 nights in a row. And across the street from the Renville Blues Festival is the Honey Springs Battlefield. Now, this is history in Oklahoma.
The Gettysburg of the West.
I never knew anything about it until February of 2023. We were driving, mapping out the route for the Blacktown ride. We saw the sign, and I had the 2 other people in the car. I said, what is that? They said, I don't know. None of us knew. So we drove up there, and there's a brand new museum. And it talks about the battles of Honey Springs. And they have reenactments up there. All this stuff. I never knew that the Civil War made it to Oklahoma. July 1863, the first black regiment out of Kansas held off the Confederates on the Texas Road at Renville. It was outnumbered 2-1, and they held them off in Renville. Never, ever heard that. Never seen it in a history book. There was nothing about it. It was before, that was before Glory, the movie Glory, with the big battle with the black soldiers in at Fort Sumter. It was before that. That battle was before that in 1863. I've learned so much history doing this project about stuff that we should be proud of and we've never heard of.
So then you moved to Summit.
Yes. Summit is 12 miles north of Renville.
Also on a high point.
At a high point.
And that's how it got its name.
That's how I got its name, Summit?
I read it was the highest point on the railroad between Arkansas and the North Canadian rivers.
Okay, so that makes sense. There's not a whole lot in Summit. There was a little store there. We didn't visit. Okay. Trying to contact the mayors and some of the people of the community is not an easy feat. And I really struggled with this when I was trying to set up the water stops in the different areas. So it all came to head. I eventually got to talk to the wife of the mayor of Redbird. And I said, Daryl hadn't called me back. She said, well, Daryl works in Tulsa. He works at night. He works a 12-hour shift. He has an hour drive in and an hour drive home. And all of a sudden it hit me in the face. The jobs are unpaid. The people have jobs, and you just need to relax and realize that they'll call you when they can.
Yeah, they're doing the best they can.
They're doing the best they can. And everybody wants something from them. So when I did the Black Towns of Oklahoma bike tour, one of the young ladies asked me, what am I going to do for the towns? And I thought about it. So what I did, I partnered with the towns, and all the proceeds were split evenly between the towns and my organization, the Community Light Foundation. Most tours to those towns, a busload of people come in, and the only thing the town get is if they sell a T-shirt or a cup or a hat. That's it. So now I partner with the towns. They're trying to figure out ways where they can earn more money, help promote my event, help promote our event. So we all share the proceeds evenly, and everybody has a vested interest in putting on a good program.
After Summit was Taft. What was Taft like?
Taft is very interesting. Taft is one of the bigger black towns.
Named after President Taft.
President Taft. It has 2 prisons, a female prison and a male prison.
We have a lot of prisons.
We have a lot of prisons in the black towns.
And in Oklahoma in general.
And in Oklahoma in general. That's true. The mayor of Taft, her name is Elsie Caesar. Miss Elsie went to college and got her bachelor's degree at 78 years old and was top of her class. You know, she's a phenomenal lady. But when the ride was over, I took Miss Elsie a check for $814. And she said something that astonished me. She said, "This is the biggest donation they've ever had." And that touched me to my core. Something that simple can make such a difference in those communities. And that is what I really learned through this process, that helping somebody do something is better than just trying to take everything that you can. You know, those communities are excited about us doing this ride this year because they get the opportunity to share their community with the cycling community. The cycling community gets to see the history of these black towns. The kids in these communities get to see 70, 80, 100 people riding bikes 40, 50, 60 miles. And it opens up the possibilities that they wouldn't normally see. So it has been such an eye-opening experience on what something small can do to change the thinking. Just when you just look at something just a little bit differently, there's always something that you can do, but sometimes something has to prod you into seeing it differently. Yeah.
She comes from quite a legacy too, because I read that the nation's first black female mayor is also from Taft.
From Taft.
Lila Foley Davis.
Lila Foley Davis. Yes. Yes. And she's still active in the community. She's like maybe 84, 85 now. She's still active in the community.
And then Redbird, the person who founded that town, thought that there were a lot of really beautiful red birds in the area. So that's how it got its name.
Now, I have not seen a redbird since I've been going to Redbird.
I see them in my backyard. Maybe they came to Tulsa. They migrated too.
But our society has changed so much. Our environmental impact has changed so much. So a lot of those patterns have changed. Redbird, those people were lovely at Redbird. They, the townspeople was so kind, and everybody came back talking about their experience at Redbird, Taft, and Tallahassee.
All right. So to the last town, Tallahassee, the oldest of the all black towns.
It's the oldest. They have a nice billboard. It's not a billboard. It's a historical marker there that's well maintained. Lovely people there. It's a very small community. I'm not sure how many people are in Tallahassee, but it's not a lot. But they're getting ready to do their yearly festival and parade. I think it's going to be in July. And we typically go down there. I'll take some cyclists down there. We'll ride in their parade. They have a little group called the Wildcats where they're basically mentoring their youth to aspire to higher education and some other programs that are really neat. And they're really trying to, especially with the guys, trying to get them on a track where they're staying focused and staying out of trouble.
And then you come back to Tulsa on your last day, and apparently there is a 14th town that was incorporated in 2001, IXL. Have you heard of that?
I have heard of IXL, and I haven't been to IXL. They have a mayor's meeting monthly. And so they had 13 towns and a lot of the smaller communities there at the meeting. And I was at one of the meetings where I met some of the people from IXL.
So what is its origin? It could be, I've read, Indian exchange land, or the three men whose names are in the letters, or it means IXL, as in IEXCEL. Did you hear how it got its name?
I did not.
I don't know which one's right.
That would be a good thing to look into. And I've never, so certain things, it never questioned how did that name come about, but that is something that is worth exploring.
Finally, can you explain Major Taylor and his legacy and why his name is part of your writing effort?
So Major Taylor was one of the best known secrets that I found. Major Taylor was a world champion track cyclist from 1899 to 1902. He wasn't a U.S. champion. He was the world champion track cyclist. He was a black kid. He was doing tricks at a bike shop. And they call him Major Taylor because he had on a jacket that was a war uniform of a major. So his name is actually Marshall Taylor, but they call him Major. He was the first black-born U.S. professional athlete. He was before Jack Johnson, the famous fighter, and Major Taylor had records that stood for 38 years. And he was racing at a time like it was less than 35 years after the Civil War. So he had the deck stacked against him. Major Taylor was choked after a cycling event unconsciously by one of his competitors. Okay. But he never wrote about him being choked. He wrote about where he had an incident. Major Taylor could not stay in the same hotels where he raced. It was so many things stacked against him, but he rose above all those challenges. Major Taylor, he was so popular that they wanted him to race in Europe, and they raced on Sundays. So Major Taylor went to church on Sundays. So they changed the races to Saturdays so he could race in Europe. He was celebrated outside of his country for the amazing athlete he was. So there are Major Taylor clubs all across the country. So when we did the bike ride for the 100th anniversary of the Black Wall Street Massacre in 2021, we had people from 17 different cities come to Tulsa to participate in that event. There's a ride in Selma. It's the Edmund Pettit Bridge ride. And when the Major Taylor clubs found out about this little local ride, the ride went from like 200 people to 1,000 people showed up to ride in that event. My goal is to get all people to come to Tulsa and ride in Oklahoma to experience the history of Oklahoma. Like I said, at one time there was more black-owned land in Oklahoma than the whole country combined. There's another organization in North Carolina called the Black Forum Tour, and they roll in, I think it's the third weekend in August. And it's called Triangle Bike Works put on that. They're a Major Taylor group also, great people. But we all kind of work together. They promote what I'm doing. I promote what they're doing. And we're just trying to celebrate the history of our communities and what we have to offer. Everything starts somewhere, and you just have to keep building on it.
Thank you so much for your time today, Osborne.
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure to chat with you.
Mine as well. In the show notes, you'll find a link to the Tulsa chapter of the Major Taylor Cycling Club, where you can learn about upcoming rides. You'll also find a link to the book, Acres of Aspiration by Hannibal B. Johnson. Follow Diary of a Nation on Instagram, Facebook, and Substack.